Hello, welcome to Video Game Palooza Tech Tips. I'm Rick Barretto, and I am here to share some free learning content from our Hope Training Academy. We're actually sharing on this video an excerpt of our A Plus and Network Plus training as part of our cybersecurity and IT apprenticeship program. And basically, we're really excited to share this because, like we had mentioned, at Hope Training Academy, we provide free IT training and industry certifications for people wanting a new career in high tech. So we tailor these courses both in person here in Indianapolis and online, which you see a subset here of this free content. It's a part of our overall multi-hour training certification to give you an idea of what kind of some of the content is. So if you like what you see here in these sample videos that we've got here on our Video Game Palooza site and online here on our web channel, check us out at hopetrainingacademy.org, and you can learn information, sign up, hear what is all available in terms of the courses, and just sit back, relax, and enjoy this content. And hopefully we'll see you soon one day in one of our courses. Take care. So in this section, you're going to be learning these are some of the key terms that you can read: flash disk, hard disk, IDE drives, all the way down. These are all storage devices of different types that you can use in computers, and you're going to be able to learn about these to help you with regards to troubleshooting and helping users. Obviously, these are the key definitions you're going to need to know, so it's a good time to read through these, kind of familiarize yourself, so by the time you go over to test out, you'll have some knowledge of these. Okay, and this is cool. I don't have it with me in our virtual set, but in an upcoming video, one of the nice things we have at the school is we've taken apart several of these hard drives. So you can actually see, and these are the old style, that there's actually a spinning media. We actually show you the disc. You can feel it. They're very physical. You can see the heads that moving back and forth. So typically there's platters that store the data. And once again, this is, well, it's still current, but this technology has been around for a long time in spinning media and spinning hard drives. So typically, as these platters spin at very, very high, what's called RPMs, revolutions per minute. These are 5,400, 7,200. These are the faster the drives, the faster they are to get the data. Typically, the larger the storage. But they've got these little arms, these read heads that kind of read back and forth as you're seeking for data. And oftentimes, you've probably heard the word head crash, or my computer crashed, or my hard drive crashed. Well, that goes back to when you take these drives apart, you'll see the head of the hard drive actually touches the platter, and that's not a good thing. So that's why they call it crashing. And normally, if that happens, you have to get rid of the hard drive. And as you'd see in this diagram, it's very, very, microscopically close to the head. We're not, it's even larger than it is right here. It is right above the head. So, literally it's skimming the surface. So there's not a whole lot of room. And everything obviously is sealed and it's clean. So that's another reason that you don't want dust or contaminants, because if somehow a dust or something got into the hard drive, you can see immediately it's going to fail because it doesn't deal well with big pieces of fuzz or lint. And then those spin rates, as I mentioned, determine how fast the platters are going and how quick the access time. And the newer devices are solid state, so there is no moving parts. There's hard drives that are solid state. The memory is solid state. There's no moving components. It's all chips. And storage devices, obviously external, like USB, have chips inside. You literally just plug it into the USB drive. There's SD cards that sometimes go in cameras, sometimes go in video cameras, sometimes go in GoPros. You can also put those into the computer. Obviously, the spinning media, the CDs, the DVDs. I mean, this just shows you how fast the stuff changes. I mean, back when I was in college at Indiana University, I still remember going to the library. They were just coming out with CDs, and oh my God, you could put 200, 300, 400 megabytes on a CD. Soon after DVDs, Blu-rays, dual layer, they kept expanding, and nowadays, because of the cloud and things, it's becoming increasingly rare to even require spinning media of any type. The discs are okay, are benefits because you can move them, you can pass them around, you can hand them to people, and they're good at long-term storage. As a aside, I'll zoom out here. Little story for you. So when I created my company, iRecord, who recently we were fortunate to sell to some really great investors to continue to grow our company, iRecord, past the 5,000 or so users that we've got all over the world. But way back when, in 2004, when I created that company and the technology, we were still using CDs and DVDs, and that company creates evidence, digital evidence, for police and law enforcement interviews. And at the time, the only way, really, because the cloud really wasn't out yet, is to create DVDs to hand out to lawyers and judges and prosecutors, and we had literally to burn every single disc. Sometimes if the interview was too long, maybe 8 hours, it would have to span across 4 or 5 discs. So as we move into the newer technology with iRecord, moving to the cloud, it's very, very rare anymore to use spinning media. But there are still good uses for it, as we see here. Storage devices, long-term storage, that you're going to have short-term and long-term storage. Typically, large capacity hard drives, portable flash. The portable USB drives are long-term. And, a lot of times, going back to our iRecord is a real instance of IT, and all of our technicians that support iRecord throughout the world, a police department would put a whole year's worth of interviews and recordings onto a portable 1 terabyte drive and then go store it so that later, if that case came up, they'd still have access to it. So that's more of the longer term storage. Obviously, now cloud changes all that. But here are some class discussion items you're going to want to review, as well as a great Professor Messer video here that you're going to learn more about storage. So from storage, we are going to one of my other favorite areas, our SATA. And these are serial ATA. They're interfaces to different types of drives. In the past, you would have IDE drives, EIDE drives. Well, now you've got something called SATA, serial ATA, and eCTA, which you're going to learn about in your study. You can read here about what those are and how they work. And what it's showing here is the data. They basically can send and receive, obviously, data on a data path, but there's acknowledgement back to the operating system. So there's a two-way communication, and we use something called SATA cables, which look like this. If you've ever gone inside of a computer or looked at one, you will know, and you will probably have seen cables like this. A little larger for you there. Move that over. And these are really nice. I mean, they're a lot easier to use than those IDE cables. Way back when I was in computers, way back when, where you'd have a different sizes and much more difficult to deal with, and the pins would bend if you didn't plug it in right. So these are much easier. You just plug in. I don't know if I've ever broken one of these SATA cables because they only go in one way. You can see they're notched like an L. So if you're holding the hard drive, you're holding the cable, rest assured you can't plug them in wrong. You will plug it in the right way. And this is a data spec. As you can see on here, what's circled, this side over here, the smaller side, is the data wire, which you just saw, which transfers the information to and from the computer, which you saw bidirectional. Over here, there's another connector, and that's your power. So once again, same thing with the power. You can only plug it in one way. When you have the hard drive in your hand, you can only plug the power in one way. So you actually have two cables for an internal SATA drive, as you see right here. This is the power cable. The red one is the data. And typically, these are voltage coming through here. The black being ground, red being 5 volt, the yellow being typically 12 volt. Typically on the motherboard of your computer, when you go inside, you'll see all of these different kind of connectors on the motherboard. In this case, there's 6 of them. These are the places where you plug in your SATA cable. So you can put in this many devices. If you've got multiple hard drives, you can put those in. CD-ROMs, DVD, any other internal component, you can share that way. Then, as you remember before, we talked about USB and different speeds. SATA's got different speeds as well. So SATA 1, you can see the speed. SATA 2 is, roughly double. SATA 3, you remember we talked about, I think in the USB, where the speed kept doubling. So roughly this is 1.5 gigabytes per second, 3 gigabytes, 6 gigabytes. They're used with SSD, and then there are connectors, and there's for optical drives too. So it keeps getting faster. The eSATA is an external. So just like you have hard drives that are internal and external, so too do you have those external SATA. And typically they are little ports on the side. You just plug it in, and they're very fast. Even in this case, you can see that it's faster than USB, and it's faster than FireWire. And you can see that's what the plug looks like. It looks a little bit different, but once again, typically these are always would be on the outside of your computer or laptop. And you can see they've got very unique settings and clips that go in, and they don't fall out. This combines SATA and USB and power, and the data and power are integrated to a single cable. Because you remember before I showed you regular SATA, you had the power, you had the data, 2 separate cables. This is all combined into one. So typically you see more RAID typically in an area that I've been involved with many years with is video production, where I used to help design video editing and broadcast systems for TVs, news stations, post-production studios. And because of the large amount of data that video produces, when you add multiple disks together, the overall throughput goes up because you've got every disk taking a little of that file, and it's a tremendous amount more of a throughput for these videos. And you're going to learn, this is very important, and if anything, if you're never familiar with computers that much, you're probably not going to have dealt with RAID. And if this is something, if you don't deal with all the time, it might seem kind of strange. That's why here at our labs at the Hope Training Academy, Indianapolis, we actually set up these RAIDs in the lab, let you load the operating system and things, and you'll learn about this. So I'm going to kind of briefly go through them here. That doesn't mean to go briefly over them. In the test material and the other stuff, you're going to have more in depth about what this stuff does, but I'm just going to kind of whiz through them here. Because just to point out, there's different types of RAID, and RAID meaning the way the data is written across the drives. So in this case, this is called RAID, where they take multiple drives. In this case, you're striping. So you've got two drives, and if one drive goes out, the other drive is still good. So, and if you see here, you got this being the data. It's just showing part of the data is written on this drive. The other part is copied over here. So, you've always got a copy of the data. And then you've got another one called redundancy. Okay, so redundancy is similar data in two separate locations at the same time. And just to be a little bit more clear, this, to the operating system is seen as one drive. So once again, there's a lot more explanation and theory behind this, but the key concept I just want to get to you here that you're going to be learning about is there are different ways and methods being RAID levels that this data, and you will be expected on the exam not to so much have the most in-depth technical knowledge of how they work, but that the different, aspects of how they should work. You've also got duplexing, where you've got typically two different cards or one or multiple cards, and they'll duplex the drive, the data across the different drives. Parity, it's called RAID 0, 1, RAID 2, RAID 3, RAID 4, RAID 5, RAID 10. Those are all different types of RAID. And in this case, with parity, you've got a drive that's a parity drive. So you've got actually three running. If one of those drives crashes, that means the other two are still going. So typically what you'll do is if that one crashes, you can take it out. And this is while the system's running. This is called hot swap. And you could put a blank drive in, and then the other two drives will rebuild automatically that parity drive. It's really cool. And so here's some of the stuff I was telling you about. So one of the ways that we were just showing this, and let me get a closer look at this for you. The different types of data here are, RAID 0, which we talked about, which was striping the data. RAID 1 is mirroring, and RAID 5, which we just talked about, is that striping with parity. So there's different rules. So on RAID 5, you need at least 3 or 4 disks so that there's that one extra disk that has the parity information. So the nice thing about RAID 5 is, for servers and things like that can never be down. Even if a drive goes out, you can pull it out while the system's going. Let's say it's a web server, and you put the new drive in, and you're up and going again. Well, I mean, you're still going. You won't be down. Is file systems, and once again, we talk about drives and RAID and hard drives and media. This has to do with the file systems of how the files and folders are stored on the media, and you're going to learn all about all of this stuff, which this is a lot of information. It's pretty in-depth. This and the previous with the RAID are probably ones that you're going to be wanting to go over several times. So you can just read some about what this stuff is. And like I said, it'll be covered very well in test out. But, once again, you just want to keep going over this stuff because this might be the first time you're ever hearing about FAT. Like, what are you talking about FAT? You're not talking about FAT or FAT32 or FAT64. File allocation tables is FAT, or NTFS. In this case, new technology file system. That was way back Microsoft in the Windows NT days when that came out, which Windows NT was an operating system. You're going to learn about there's different ways, like a pie that it's shown. You allocate files across the file system logically. So we know there's a file. You can have a Microsoft Word file named my name Rick. You can then put those in a folder that stores files. The folder might be called Hope Training Academy, and then the folder would be stored in a partition or volume on the hard drive. So this circle could represent one disk. Let's say it's a 1 terabyte physical hard drive. Well, you can take that physical 1 terabyte hard drive, and through partitioning, in this case, we'll just say these 3 colored ones, you can partition those into 3 separate drives. So you've got, say, the C drive, which is the blue, the D drive, which is a separate drive. That's a virtual drive. It still lives on the same hard drive. And then you've got, say, the V drive, which is the yellow, which could be a video drive. So you're going to learn about MBR, master boot record, shrinking of partition volumes, and Windows disk types where there's basic and dynamic. This is also getting into a lot of detail here. Very powerful. You have to be really careful when dealing with any time you see partition or master boot record or sectors. If you don't know what you're doing, you're using the wrong tools, you can wipe out like instantly any data, on your entire hard drive or folder if you don't know what you're doing here. I myself have wiped out many drives myself when you think you're doing something and you're not doing it right, and you can wipe out a partition in a file system very, very easily. And we have users through all of our different companies, whether we're on our video game company, Dream Authentics, or some of those companies, customers accidentally thinking they know what they do and they wipe out their whole game system. And I record where same thing, the customer puts something in and all of a sudden, they wipe out all their interviews. So thankfully they're going to have computer technicians like yourselves to make sure that doesn't happen and fix stuff. So once again, different types of partitions. There's a primary partition, extended partitions. I'm not even going to go into this because it's really too deep for our brief purposes here. And you're going to learn how the master boot record interfaces with the bootloader and the BIOS and the operating system. It's really fantastic of how all this stuff works. You're going to learn about dynamic disks. GPT, this is a type of partition. So they can be basic or dynamic. They can support 128 partitions. You don't need extended partitions, and you can go from 8 to 9.4. I don't know, that zettabytes. That's a lot of data. So the GPT is the master boot record, that partition style that is for the latest and greatest computers. Hard drive storage, the larger capacity. It has extra data integrity stuff where you can recover lost data. A lot of backups that we learn from the old days when we just had some of the entry level. So here's some of the operating systems that support GPT, starting at Windows 7, 8, and 10. Windows 7 and later for reads, they don't really support 32-bit. Linux and Mac also support GPT.